We all know that the Greek capital, Athens, is steeped with history, with culture, and with a load of fascinating things to do. You can check out my video on things to know before you go to Athens, but today we can do something different because there are actually quite a few decent day trips to do from Athens, and you will be surprised. I was surprised, I was shocked. My perhaps little bit of a, I'm not going to say bigoted, I'm going to say slightly narrow, blinkered view of Greece. We all think it's feta cheese and very hot, arid, dry weather, but that's my ignorance. There are so many amazing places in and around the Greek capital for you to explore. So kick back, relax, maybe grab a pot of hummus and an Efes beer or an ouzo and smash some plates like Zorba. That's enough stereotyping because let's throw that out the window. This is going to be fun. I have to say the two day trips we did were really eye-opening. Amazing scenery, such contrast, such diversity, so many fantastic things. Not just the history, but some of the nature, the views, the vistas. We saw snow, we saw mountain villages, we saw it was. It just the variety was amazing, and it certainly made me feel a little bit stupid for assuming that Greece was all one thing as opposed to the amazing country it is. But before we get on to the meat and bones of this, a quick bit of context, which is that if you are going to Athens and you do want to do a day trip, there are quite a few day trips, but early start is important. We were getting picked up at 7:20. A lot of the longer trips, you're looking at an hour and a half to 2.5 hours drive there, and obviously the same back. So they can be quite long days. So usual precautions, plenty of water, snacks, all that sort of gubbins. The other thing that is also quite an issue, which if you are going to do your research, you'll find there is a lot of options. This means you might find yourself being slightly overwhelmed by the choice. We're talking thousands. It's 1,000 plus here, but I think it was over 3,000 choices for you. Now, it's actually quite easy to whittle down. The problem is that there's a big overlap when you click day trips with the stuff within Athens and the day trips you can do outside of Athens. We also went during the winter, so a lot of those cruises and island hopping options weren't really on the table. So the three main ones you can do is, and I might butcher some of these pronunciations, Meteoro, which is a place in the mountains with lots of monasteries. Epidurus, and the other one is Delphi. The third and final one is Delphi. There are others. There are other options, but those seem to be the three most popular ones, at least when we went. It was quite a close call, but as Meteoro seemed the furthest away, we went for the E one, the Epidaurus, and the Delphi day trips. And one additional thing that is a little bit confusing is when you select private tour, there is the private tour, as in the person that will drive you to these places, but often they won't be allowed to take you into those places. So I got really befuddled by this and ended up just doing group tours. But it looks like when it says additional guide, you it's discretionary. So if you get to the site, you can pay for the guide or just go in yourself. So be aware of that because I really didn't quite understand it at all. Okay, so let's talk about the first one we did, which was to Epidaurus, Mycenae, and Nafpilo. Oh my god, this is going to be tragic. I might need to get Artificial Anthony back to pronounce these words for me.
Epidaurus, Mycenae, and Naflio.
Okay, that's more than enough. Thank you, AI Anthony. You algorithm. I will take it from here. So, the first thing about this trip, which was a tad frustrating, and this has happened to me have a couple more times recently as well, which is I'll go to via tour, or it could possibly be another website. And I will book a trip, which I think is with a tour provider. It's not with a tour provider, it's with a middleman or a middle person, if you will. So you end up not the tour company that says it is not them, and they punt you off to another one. Fortunately, here for me, the tour was on sale. Otherwise, it would have been like a 70% markup. So, and although our version had lunch included, so if you want to spend an extra 70% or €50 per head on a rather mediocre lunch. But yeah, make sure you check out the small print and see if you're going with that company that actually says it is providing the tour, as opposed to them punting you off to another. Anyway, needless to say that the tour itself was really good. The first stop on this tour was a toilet stop. Yes, that's right, by a nice little roadside supermarket that had some little cafe and some facilities. However, the little trick there was that this was also by the Corinth Canal. Now, if you aren't familiar with like the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal, the Athenian equivalent is the Corinth Canal, which is a person made canal sort of cutting straight through. Now, this is a good song. It's not for the faint of heart, because the bridge is goes over the canal. On the pedestrian side, it is quite narrow, and as we know, Athens is quite a busy place, so you get a lot of tourists going on these day trips. So you will find getting quite congested on this bridge. So keep that in mind, that if you are a little bit queasy when it comes to heights and vertigo, you maybe want to sort of either not go too far out, or if you go around to the right hand side, you can have a look over. But yeah, it's a good little it's a good human. And of course, that cursed AI Anthony wouldn't be so sloppy as to make such a garbled mess of it, such as I did. But I am human, and if you value human content, as flawed as it is, please like my video and subscribe. That would be lovely. But the Corinth Canal was a nice additional spot to stop at. The one thing, a little tip for you, of course, is when you go up and you're driving, you will drive across, and it'll be on the right hand side. So if you make sure you sit on the right hand side of the bus, you will get probably the best view as you go across the bridge, as you will see on this nice little snippet here. From then, we went up to the Mycenaean village or fort or area. There were a couple of spots here. One was which I'll just quickly talk about in a second, is sort of an old tomb. And then you go up into the mountain fort, which was fun. I'm not going to bore you with a history lesson here, not least because I don't really remember most of it, because it's very complex and long and involves lots of artifacts. But needless to say, so we went to a fantastic old tomb. Engineering miracle. It's like, this is like BC, however many centuries ago, and they somehow carved out the tomb inside the hill and created a fantastic kind of archway, which is still standing to this day. So that was particularly impressive. Then we went up to the fort. This was perhaps one of the first examples for me of me sweeping aside my rather prejudiced view of what Greece would be like. There was obviously you're going through vineyards. I know that vineyards and olive oil yards, olive yards, whatever they're called. But just absolutely beautiful scenery, green, lush green, fantastic sweeping views, absolutely beautiful as we sort of walked up and around the fort. So definitely a great place to go, certainly on a pleasant day. I imagine in the summer it might get a little bit heaving, because, and indeed sticky and sweaty, because you are exposed. There is not much cover, so you're going to get beaten down on the sun. There is also a museum there, which we sort of did a guided tour of. That was mildly interesting, but a lot of these places you go outside of Athens, you will certainly, when you go to the museums and the artifacts, it'll say blah 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 blah. This is an ancient headrest from the Mycenaean Empire, and then in small font of the line say, "Oh, this is a replica. You've got to go to the the National Museum in Athens, the Archaeological Museum, to see the real one. So bear that in mind. But yeah, the museum's good, gives you a little bit of background. And we had maybe, I don't want to say half hour, 45 minutes to walk around the fort. That was still pretty good amount of time to get up to the top and then walk around and back down again. After that, we headed to the coastal town of Nafpilo, I think it's called Nafpilo. A Nafpilo, that's something you don't sleep on very well. This is a village on the coast, and I think she said there was some. Was it the Venetian influence? So it does feel like a almost like an Italian style Riviera sort of vibe to it. There is a fantastic castle, big dominant fortress at the top. We unfortunately didn't get to go up there. There is a little island with again a nice little fort castle on that. So the and a good big promenade. So it's one of those things that you wouldn't expect to necessarily see that in Greece. You might perhaps see it in a Greek island, but I wasn't expecting to see on mainland Greece. We did have a lunch stop there. I think I had some pickled herrings or something, but it wasn't that much to write home about. But definitely a good chance to have a walk around, take in the sights, and see another different aspect. So we've got the countryside to Mediterranean coastal town in quick succession. And lastly was, I'm going to have to read this. I'm still going to get it wrong. Epidural. This was another ancient site a bit further along. This was, you had to use your imagination for a fair bit of it because obviously lots of it's ruins, but she talked about the hospital, the way it was laid out. You had a nice former sort of stadium there, but it was maybe good to get a nice sort of sense of the historic importance of that spot. But the big thing for this visit, this site, is it's amphitheatre. Theatre. What's the difference in theatre and amphitheatre? I don't know. It's getting a little bit old and it was a little bit sort of creaky and decrepit and closed off in places. But it's just amazing amazing seeing such a structure produced so long ago and still standing. Absolutely amazing. And the acoustics, the tour guide did a nice little acoustic thing where we could sort of hear how it would pan out in terms of an actual performance. And apparently they still do performances there to this day. So all in all, this was a good mixture of some scenery, some history, and a little bit of difference. Seaside, countryside, mountains, not kind of mountains, hills. But this was definitely worth considering if you are in Athens. Let's now move on to day trip number 2, and this is where the fun begins. This is where I thought the experience on day trip number 1 was good. It provided a huge amount of variety and changed my outlook considerably on what Greece has to offer. This one upped it even further. Now, again, a nice early start. This was a smaller group tour. The last one was on a fairly big bus. But the first stop here was Arachova. Arachova is a mountain town, sort of once you start going across the up towards Delphi. Again, just lost for words. Which is this could be somewhere in the Alps. They had a great sort of almost like a Swiss kind of alpine feel to it, and there were ski resorts. And look, there's some mountains with some snow-capped peaks. And just dramatic views down through the valley. And we were able to, well, they dropped us off at the various sites, or sorry, those viewing platforms, as it were. And then you have a nice little walk through the village. Quite a few little quirky shops there, quite quaint. Bit of a word of warning is the pavements, like in Athens, are narrow, but very, very narrow. So the cars do can whiz by quite quickly, and they can get quite close to you. So just make sure you're not sort of having any bag or anything like that leaning in the road, because otherwise you may get squished like grape, as Mr. Miyagi once said. But yes, so we've had hillside, we've had Mediterranean village, coastal village, and now we've got an alpine village in the mountains. So What more is there to offer? Well, once we finish there, we go down to Delphi. And Delphi is again another historic site from a civilization outside of Athens. As you traverse your way through Delphi, you will go past various different parts of the historic town, but it really does come into its own when you get further up. And it is a little bit steep, so if you're perhaps a little bit slow on your feet or have some kind of mobility issues, it might be a little bit tricky to navigate. But once you get up to where the auditorium is and you can look across the valley, just fantastic, absolutely fantastic views. And then if you go all the way further up, there's actually a great little sports stadium or remnants of a sports stadium. But for me, actually, sorry, right down the bottom on the other side, I think it was some kind of burial place or some other sort of area, but that was out of bounds because apparently lots of the rocks had been falling off the mountain and potentially crushing these innocent tourists. What would we do if we all got crushed by rocks? We couldn't give them all our euros. But the point is that these things really opened my eyes. These sites, because initially, like, oh yeah, just a bunch of ruins, boring. But when you start piecing together the story and how so many of these aspects of ancient Greek life actually do filter through, and the structures they have, the healthcare, the education, the entertainment, the sport, the theatre, it just blows your mind, and you sort of realise how those threads really influenced modern society. So well done, well done. There is also a museum at the bottom of or you come out the ruins and you turn right. Another museum there, lots of artifacts. Again, lots of artifacts that actually are in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens rather than being in this local one. But absolutely stunning, absolutely stunning. But if you can believe it, there's another twist. Well, I'm not quite sure the twist is up with I am your father or I see dead people, but snow, not just snow, proper snow. Not the snow we get. Oh look, a snowflake. It's a snowflake. I'm a snowflake. All the snow. It's like proper, settled, deep snow where you can build a snow person. You can build a whole snow family if you so desired. But as you can see from these pictures, just driving through and up the mountains in this snow was surreal. I think I've said before, it's almost like Narnia, with that line, The Witch of the Wardrobe, Aslan, Mr. Tumnus, all those sort of people. The thing I found just really, really fun was the again an additional layer of difference that I hadn't expected. Nobody had said anything about that. So, wait, snow. Nobody told me. So it doesn't snow in Greece, does it? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. The problem with the snow was that the Sparta cave that we were supposed to visit was snowed in. So we didn't get to do that, unfortunately. However, as an alternative, they did take us to a nice little ruins. I can't actually remember the name of this place because I think it was like the tour guide Town or something like that. I didn't quite catch it, but there was a couple of old ruins. But there was a really, really pretty kind of pond, rivery, bridgey thing with some nice, I think, whether it's spring water, natural water, or whatever it was. Maybe the cave would have been more fun and more historic, but it was still better than nothing. And so then the last part of this tour, which in theory would be like, oh, the exciting one, which is the Spartan battlefield. Yes, from the film 300, this is Sparta. And quick, I am not trying to model myself on a Spartan with this. I'm not growing a beard. I just haven't shaved. There's a difference. One's intent and one's neglect. I also don't have the physique of any of those people, but that's my problem. The Unfortunately, this was probably the most disappointing. First of all, there was a thermal spa. I say thermal, a natural spa with natural hot spring water. So in theory, that would have been good. But we had to deal with some visitors from overseas. I'm sure you can read between the lines, who had camped out there and had made it their home, which makes perfect sense because it's free hot running water. But yeah, apparently there used to be a hotel there, yeah, but it's probably not. And obviously it smells of sulfur. That's because of the water, not because of the people. So that was a bit underwhelming. And then, of course, we get to the piece de resistance of the Spartan battlefield, which is pretty much a car park. So you just have some camper vans there, and it's pretty barren, to be honest. I mean, I guess it's interesting historically, if certainly if you like the film, or having visualizing these this epic battle between the Persians and the Spartans. But even so, I wouldn't get too excited. And probably one of the try and find a nice word. One of the silliest, dumbest, potentially dangerous decisions they made was to build a monument to the Spartans. That's right, build a monument to the Spartans at this place. However, rather than building it by the car park where it was, they built it on the other side of a dual carriageway. So if you want to go and see the statue and the plaque and the monument, all that, you have to try and cross a busy road. And this is not just a normal road, it's I think it's obviously a freeway, so they get pretty quick, those cars. So you're kind of taking your life in your own hands. I don't know why they would just build a bridge or I don't know, something like that. But it was, yeah, a bad decision. So again, if you are someone that maybe isn't particularly fast on your feet or have some mobility issues, be aware that this trip, if you do want to go and see the monument, which is just a bloody bit of Spartan guy stood there, statue, it's not that great. You may have to cross a busy road, but luckily, if you're able to cross the road without getting completely smashed by all the traffic, then use the tour guides the other side to take you. And a word of warning on this one as well: my golden rule on day trips is go when you can. Um, from the uh, from the ruins where the guy's hometown, there was not a toilet break. And coming, so if you are coming in, this is the last chance you'll get. So if someone says need a toilet break, go to toilet because. For me, I think it was for us. It was about 2.5-ish hours traipsing back in the van, and I then had that that thing where you're like, I should have gone, I should have gone, and then my brain's going, you're gonna need to go, you're gonna need to go, and then you end up sort of. Okay, so don't worry, this isn't going to get messy. There's no going to be like need for a he wee or a she wee or anything, but it just starts playing over. So make sure you you go when you can. Golden rule of day trips. I have to say, I was very impressed by my Athens day trips. The huge amount of just the disparate experiences, snow, sun, mountains, hills, coastal towns. It was such a great variety of experiences, and in 2 days. And I think, obviously, if we went back sort of in the autumn or the spring, I'm not sure about the summer. There are other things you can do. The boat tours, you can go down to like the Temple of Poseidon and a few other things. But I would 100% recommend getting out of Athens, as great as it is, seeing some of these other places that actually predate the sort of Athenian culture, and lapping up not just the history but the views. And hopefully, a bit like us, you'll have some glorious weather to enjoy it. Hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you very soon.